皆さんこんにちは。ピボットの野島です。今日のテーマは今ホットな話題でもあるフジメディアホールディングス大改革でございます。今、日本を代表するメディア企業が株主と経営の対話という局面で大きな問いに直面していると思います。テレビ局、今後どうなるんですか？コーポレートガバナンス、あと不動産戦略、さらには取締役会の本質的な役割って何なのか、何がベストな選択なのか、いろんなところをですね、6月の株主総会の前にしっかり深掘っていきたいと思います。そして今回お迎えするのは、30年以上にわたり日本株への長期投資を続けてきたアメリカ系ファンドで富士の大株主、ダルトンインベストメンツの共同創業者、CIO、ジェイミー・ローゼンワルドさん、さらにはダルトンのパートナー、西田真澄さんです。どうぞよろしくお願いします。
ありがとうございます。
よろしくお願いします。
よろしくお願いします。So welcome to Pivot, and great to have you both here. And Jamie-san, you came all the way from California. Thank you so much.
I come here all the time.
Yeah, right. But anyway, this is the really big topic here. And we hear your name, Dalton. It's like every day in daily news. And I'd like to ask you about what Dalton is and what's going to happen next and what you're proposing to those Fuji Media holdings out there.
Well, you ask a lot of questions at the same time.
Yes, I know, but this is...
But I'm happy to try and answer them one at a time.
Okay, thank you very much.
So what is Dalton Investments?
Yes.
Dalton Investments is a fund manager who manages money for pensions, endowments, wealthy families. And we started the company in 1999,
yes.
So we've been in business for 26 years. And Fuji Media, happily, has gotten the attention of the Japanese public. And we have been enormously grateful for all of the help that we've received at Dalton from the public, from the employees at the company, from the suppliers, from sponsors. And the management has also been willing to finally listen to us in many respects, but there's still a long way to go.
So, do you think that Dalton is an activist? Because like in Japan, you are known as an activist, but we have some people have a little negative image for this word. So what's the meaning of activist and what's your philosophy here?
So it's a great question, right? I don't feel like I'm an activist at all. I started investing in Japan, in Japanese equities, in 1972.
Yes.
So how old were you in 1972? You were not even a blink of an eye of your mother and father's, right?
I'm born in 96.
So most of your audience wasn't even born when I started investing in Japan. So this is not a new game for me, and I'm not here just to buy quickly and sell quickly. I'm here and have been for the long term, right? Over 50 years of investing is not short-term activism, okay? And Dalton has been investing in Japan since its inception in 1999.
Yes.
And our average period of holding securities is over 7 years. So usually activists are viewed as people who buy and sell quickly and push management to change quickly and sell and run away. This is not our strategy. So I would like to define our behavior as engaging with companies and trying to improve corporate governance over the long term, investing for the long term, and being helpful to management in a way that I think is good for all of the stakeholders, whether it's the employees of the company. And in the case of Fuji Media, the employees have been incredibly helpful. They put massive amounts of pressure on the management of the company. The sponsors withdrew all of their advertising. This has put massive pressure on the management. So corporate engagement is more than just simply activism. It's trying to get all of the stakeholders involved in making change.
Right.
And this is what's happened at Fuji Media. And I think why it's gotten a lot of attention is that so many stakeholders have been helpful. and want to see change in Fuji Media for the better of all of Japan, not just for the betterment of the one company, but the whole industry needs to change.
I agree with that because I was in that industry for a couple of years. So
you know intimately, and you were a woman in the industry, which is even more impressive and also difficult.
Yes, I can't address the detail about that, but I do know what that's like to work in that industry. So I totally get it. But I'd like to go back to the topic that you've been investing this Japanese market for almost like 50 years, right?
More than 50.
More than 50 years. I'm sorry.
Sorry.
50 years. That's a long time. So what caught your eyes? Like, I mean, Japanese...
Why Japan? Why Gaijin in Japan, right?
No, I mean, like, what's the charm here?
So I had a grandfather who began investing in Japan in 1962.
Okay.
He was the first Gaijin employee of Nikko Shoken in New York City, starting in 1963. And I used to spend my summers working at first Nikko Shoken and then Daiwa Shoken in the 1970s. So it's because of the family relationship with the country and because over a long period of time, I gained some perhaps expertise and understanding of the culture. And I enjoy visiting Japan, and I've made a lot of money in Japan investing here, and it's been good to me. And the people have been good to me. So that's why I'm still doing it.
Oh, I'm a bit flattered. Oh, do you have anything to add?
Jamie, I think you want to talk a little bit about your first investments in Japanese equities as well.
Sure. So in 1972, I'm a young teenager, and I invested in Kirin beer because it was the first Japanese beer that was exported to the United States. Even though I wasn't old enough to drink beer, I was still investing in it.
Okay, I'm not going to ask detail, but...
Maybe I had a little bit of beer from my parents' can, but nonetheless.
Yeah.
The other company that I invested is a bank called an old bank called Bank of Tokyo. It is now part of the Mitsubishi Group, but in the 1970s, it had a monopoly on foreign exchange. So it was the only bank that you could go to exchange your yen for dollars and dollars for yen. So that was a very profitable business, and it was unique. And the banking industry, the Ginko industry, grew like crazy, and Kirin beer became a very popular beer globally. And so I made so much money from those two investments that I was able to buy my first car when I went to college a number of years later. And I also was able to travel to Europe as a backpacker with the profits from those investments.
I see.
And I took lots of young ladies out to dinner on some of the profits from those investments. So,
thanks to Japan.
So think of how much fun I've had with Japanese investing.
I see. So your career or your life began with Japanese market.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And so investing in the United States and investing in Japan are completely familiar to me. And then over the years, I started investing in Korea because it's close to Japan, only an hour and a half flight from Tokyo to Seoul. And then from Tokyo to Seoul in 1985, which is when I started investing in Korea. It was an easy flight to Shanghai and Hong Kong and Thailand, etc. So I've been spending my life investing all around the region of Asia as well as in the United States.
I see. So I watched your interview, filmed maybe back in 2020 or something, and you said that there are barbarians at the gate. And I think that is because of the growing interest of activists that they are coming to Japanese market to get the profit,
Well, the barbarians at the gates are investors from the United States,
yes, I know.
From Europe, and more importantly, much more importantly, Japanese investors. Japanese investors are the most scary usually for Japanese companies. And I think that, you're seeing a change, a dramatic change in the industry caused to a large extent by the domestic investors and the change of other companies buying other companies and managements being put under pressure that they never were put under before.
So there are differences between them and Dalton. That's clear.
Yeah, it's hard to say that we're a barbarian, but given the fact that Gaijin translates into almost barbarian, I guess you could call me a barbarian.
Well,
if
I'm
you
not
want.
saying that, but in terms of engaging with shareholders, compared to the U.S., how far are we behind? Like Japan is behind here. I mean, because barbarians.
No, it's a great question.
Okay.
So, Barbarians at the Gate was a book. Title of a book that was published in 1988. Okay, so for me, given the history of investing in Japan and the United States, this period reminds me very much of the late 1980s, when activist investors in the United States were requesting companies to change their behavior, when private equity firms were just being formed to try and save management, if you will, and take companies private. And we are now seeing the emergence of private equity in Japan to a large extent. And the difference in private equity today in Japan versus the United States is private equity is probably the largest investor in the world. And in the 1980s in the US, it had very little capital. So Japanese management are being wined and dined, in my opinion, by private equity every day, every night, to go private. And because Japan is such what I consider a very cheap market, meaning assets are being sold very cheaply, private equity will have a huge influence over the next 10 years. And many, many companies will go private. And my estimate is that while there are almost 4,000 listed companies in Japan today, in 10 years there may be half that many. And that would be a dramatic change.
There's significant government support. So, for example, the Tokyo Stock Exchange is actually out there putting out a delisting criteria. So that basically means that if you don't trade enough in volume, if you don't have big enough market cap, if you're not financing from the equity market, then really there's no point to remain listed. So TSE has been pretty clear about maybe even delisting companies. So I think even in 2025, we're seeing management buyouts, so MBO, or private equity transactions pretty much every week, which I think is a significant change in the last 2 or 3 years.
Nishida-san is absolutely right. You have the FSA, which has created the M&A guidelines from 2019 in the beginning to 2024 change, which has opened the gates basically to M&A. You have METI, Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry, changing the tax law, which includes restricted stock, what we call in the United States stock options, to create incentive for senior management to own more stock and feel like an owner and benefit from that instead of the historic cash compensation which they all received. And METI has also created, which is very important from Fuji Media's perspective, METI has created the tax-free spin-off. Now, Sony is really the first major company to utilize this tax-free spin-off, and this summer we will see Sony Financial spun off to shareholders as a separate trading vehicle, which will do what METI's objective was, which is to unlock conglomerate discounts.
Right.
Conglomerates in Japan, of which there are many, traded a huge discount to what we call the sum of the parts, meaning adding each one of the different entities together to come up with the real value.
I see.
And if you do that in Japan, you will find so many companies that traded a massive discount, including Fuji Media Holdings.
I see. So,
which was one of the things that attracted us to the company in the first place.
So like the Japanese market is so undervalued, you're saying, right?
It is indeed.
Still.
It is still dramatically undervalued.
Okay, thank you very much. And then I'd like to ask you, Masumi-san, about the TV industry itself, because I listened to your podcast. And then you said that the media industry caught your eye because it was undervalued specifically. But it also that industry is facing, strong structural headwinds, you say? It's like declining viewership, the rise of streaming, shifts in advertising revenue.
Yeah, so I think, so currently especially in the Japanese market, there's a general decline in advertising. So structurally, Japanese broadcasters are having a difficult time because there's less sponsors practically paying for spots, for advertisements. And also we've seen a continued trend where people younger, and also I think actually all ages, would watch streaming or YouTube, right? So I think the current model in broadcasting has to change. And I think it has to be not limited by actually thinking about trying to put a certain show at a specific time. So I think media and also basically TV broadcasters should move towards a content business because that's essentially what they're really good at, right? So if you think about what Japan has been successful on global content, it's basically, anime. Yeah, you can basically say, for example, right? The biggest IP in the world is Pokemon.
Right.
They came from a game, but it kind of moved to cartoon, and that's a whole franchise, effectively. So I think Japan can create multiple Pokemons, or it could create, multiple Hello Kitties, but I think there just needs to be that focus.
Right.
So I think broadcasters generally need to change. I think Fuji Media Holdings is interesting because Fuji TV is effectively almost being forced to change. But if we really want to revitalize, the broadcasting industry or the content industry, so I think we basically need to move towards more content creation, IP creation, and monetize that content.
Right.
I'm not sure if it's that popular in Japan, but there's a TV show called Bluey, right? So Bluey is a 7-minute TV show. It's about a cartoon dog. It's made, the show itself was made in Australia.
You're too old to watch. But my grandchildren watch.
Love it.
They love Bluey.
Okay.
And they like the toys of Bluey, and they like watching the show of Bluey, and they live Bluey everything.
Okay.
So it's a phenomenal franchise, and the franchise is worth what?
3 to 4 billion.
Which is as much as all of Fuji Media.
Wow.
Just a Bluey franchise.
Okay.
And then what's the other one that they watch, which is only like 15-second segments?
Oh, well, there's also Cocomelon.
Cocomelon. This is another franchise that started in Orange County, California, very close to where I live. Okay. And it is also a franchise that just by itself, making pictures and scenes of children's behavior, all in anime, is worth as much as all of Fuji Media.
So if you just take Bluey and Cocomelon, Bluey specifically is the most watched content in the US.
Right.
Popular than anything else, and from streaming perspective,
even more popular than the Dodgers. Even more popular than that. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Shocking, I think.
Shocking.
yeah.
But the way you said it's like the content business is already the red ocean, I think.
Right.
But do you think that Fuji got something to give out there? I mean, do you think that Fuji has any IP that are hidden?
They have tons of hidden IP, and they have a massive library
really?
that hasn't been utilized in years, I'm sure, and hasn't been monetized.
Okay.
You agree?
Yeah, and I think on top of the library, I think they have the ability to create and distribute content. They just need focus, I think.
Yeah, right. Focus is the key.
Yeah.
So focus is the key. Then I think the governance has to change right now. That's the point, right? So I'd like to talk about your proposals to Fuji right now. I think you made 4 main proposals out there. So could you walk us through them briefly, either of you?
Absolutely.
Okay,
so give me the first proposal that we made.
Okay, board overhaul is one, right?
Well, we didn't have to do anything. basically between the employees and the sponsors, the board overhauled itself. The only problem that we still see with the board that is currently there and the one that they're putting forward, meaning the 11 directors, is that all of those people were chosen by the key players who we started this discussion and fight with. Hieda-san and Kanamitsu. Hieda-san has been on the board and controlling Fuji Media for more than 25 years, sat on the board for more than 40 years himself, and Kanamitsu-san is famous for being his supporter and someone that carried out his requests. Those gentlemen have handpicked the current board. So my feeling is we're still fighting the ghost of the gentleman that we entered this discussion with. And while they have put forward this group of people who are probably highly qualified, the reality is they are all being handpicked by people that we believe caused the problem in the first place. So we have put forward our own group of 12, including Nishida-san, and a group of incredibly talented people. Kitao-san is one of our chosen directors, and he is an incredibly successful and creative entrepreneur, one of Japan's great entrepreneurs of his generation. And we believe that different people from different backgrounds who don't all have one person that was choosing them and have different views will create a much more engaging and dynamic board. And that's why we put forward that proposal. Would you like to add?
Yeah, so staying on the topic of the board, so out of those we nominated, so we've had real estate specialists. For example, we have Kei Tanaka, who basically headed Goldman Sachs Special Situations Group and did real estate. We've also had ex-CEOs and CFOs of listed companies. We also even have representation of ex-employee of Fuji TV. So we even have Banno-san. So we think that the current board we have consists of people that basically have the skill, the experience, and also the passion. Because these people, we actually interviewed about 50 to 60 candidates between February and March. So usually when engagement fund and activists, when they start a process like this, they would usually use a headhunter. But basically for the people that we've chosen, people we had some sort of relationship with or introduction. So there are many introductions, but we, through meeting these 50, 60 people, we thought these people were the most qualified. We have real estate professionals, we have people that have run listed companies, including Kitao-san and Kikuoka-san. And I think we haven't discussed this, but we also have shareholder representation. So shareholder representation basically means someone that represents practically the shareholders. So that's Mizochi Sensei and myself. And we think this group is effectively a very qualified group to make sure that there is continued change and improved governance for the company.
I see that. So recently, Fuji nominated the new directors, including Sawada-san, but now from Dalton's, yours. What was your response to it?
I think we were genuinely very disappointed because we thought we had very highly qualified, what we thought was very highly qualified people and also passionate to take Fuji Media Holdings during a very difficult period. I think what's important is for everyone to know that Fuji TV is going through a very difficult time because there's generally a loss in revenue, right? There needs to be a turnaround, right? But to turn around a company is not easy, right? So practically Shimizu-san needs to surround himself with people that have experience and also that have the capacity an ability to advise Shimizu-san during this difficult time. I think this is something that is probably difficult to understand because of company law, but board of directors are basically people that represent shareholders generally, including internal directors and external directors.
Yeah, it's supposed to be that way.
Right. The role of the external director is to basically advise, monitor, and effectively watch what the executive team does, the executive officers. So in Japanese, 助言、監督、監視. And it's really important that from a governance perspective, it's really important that you have a strong team of people that would have the ability to do that so that it helps advise Shimizu-san to turn around the company during a very difficult period. So we thought we had this team in place, but unfortunately, the FMH board thought otherwise. They didn't agree with us.
Right.
We were extremely disappointed that they didn't engage with us prior to announcing all of their directors and therefore rejected all of our directors without any discussion at all, which is, in my opinion, highly unusual and extraordinarily disappointing for all the shareholders and all the stakeholders. So we are now in a proxy fight, and we're hoping that the best group wins. And we understand that we have a huge hill to climb, that there are so many historical relationships between a lot of the shareholders and Fuji Media Holdings. And so we are at a massive disadvantage in our quest for change. We knew that going into the discussions, but this is the only way you're going to make change in Japan.
Okay. So you are already preparing for the proxy fight.
We're already preparing for the proxy fight in June at the annual meeting. We are discussing with other shareholders and presenting our plan, our 4-point plan, as you mentioned already, and we're discussing how we can add value for the benefit of all stakeholders and the shareholders in particular. And we think that, this is what's necessary.
Okay, so I thought a proxy fight would be a last resort
It
for
is
you.
a last resort. We never want to do that.
But you're in it, right? But I thought you've talked to FMH leaders.
So the
Did
problem
it
was
go
they never called us. They had plenty of opportunity, and we reached out to them multiple times.
Yeah, I get it.
And they never contacted us, even though we gave them plenty of opportunity. So this is what's so disappointing.
I know. And I've heard that some Fuji Media Holdings employees are kind of worried about the drastic change of the management. What would you say to them?
So I think that's a very good question. So currently there's 18 seats at Fuji Media Holdings board, right? That's according to the corporate charter. So if we receive one seat, our representation is only 1/18. If we get 2 seats, the representation is only 2/18. So whether it's Kitao-san or myself or other external directors, we only have equal votes to what the company wants to achieve. So I've heard some situations where, Kitao-san is too powerful, or, he might be trying to take over the company.
Yeah, it
right?
seems like,
Right. But realistically, you can't take over a company with 1/18 seats. He's only one opinion, one vote out of 18 seats. Yeah, so I think it's misunderstood. But I do understand that Fuji TV employees are worried because Shimizu-san is basically by himself, and he's had a lot of the senior membership team leave. But I also think it's an opportunity for the middle management and also the staff and employees to really embrace change, right? So if there are projects that they never could achieve because of politics or a certain glass ceiling, then I think now is actually probably a good time to try, right? So I know that it's not I understand that it's not a good situation, but at the same time, I think it's an opportunity for change.
Right. Thank you very much. Okay, so reforming from the top is crucial.
Reforming from the top is crucial, and changing the board of directors is the first item or one of the last items that we feel is necessary.
Okay.
We're incredibly grateful for the changes that have already occurred. We feel like we've probably gotten 80% of what we wanted from the beginning, but 80% in my class at NYU is still a B-. And none of my team members got too many B-minuses in their careers. So we're trying for A+.
And then let's talk about the real estate.
Yes.
That was the second proposal, I guess.
It was the second proposal.
And the simple question is, why push for a spin-off?
Right. So as I say, in 2017, Ministry of Economic Trade and Industry, METI, came up with the spin-off code. And obviously a number of METI brilliant young managers there understood something called behavioral economics, and also understood that Japanese conglomerates trade at massive discounts.
Right.
And one of the ways to unlock the discounts is to allow spin-offs with no tax, because all of the major conglomerates historically told me that they couldn't spin off any of their subsidiaries without paying an enormous amount of tax. That was always the hurdle. So by METI unlocking that, all of a sudden you could spin off pieces of the business that didn't necessarily have any synergy with the other pieces of the business. Now, if you can explain to me why a media company has synergy with a real estate company, I would be enormously grateful, because I've asked the question of Fuji Media multiple times, and they haven't been able to give me any answer that makes any sense in any language. So here, the government is basically encouraging companies from a behavioral economic standpoint. They are trying to encourage companies to unlock value, because who's the biggest shareholder in Japan? The government.
Right.
The BOJ and the GPIF. So essentially the government of Japan is the largest shareholder. So who's going to be the biggest beneficiary of unlocking value? The government. Which we want, and the Japanese people.
Yeah, right.
So
At least two.
we want to encourage it. And we want to help the government. We want to encourage all of the shareholders of Fuji Media to benefit, and therefore unlocking value. The easiest way to do that is to spin off the real estate company to its shareholders.
I see.
Obviously, you work for a media company.
Yes, I worked for the traditional one, but
Right. So can you imagine Sasaki-san going ahead and buying real estate?
I will be worried.
So I think it's the same thing. Media is media. Real estate is real estate. If you run two businesses together, then you have to think about if you want to put $10 million into the real estate business, or do you want to put $10 million in the content business? So there's always going to be conflict.
Right.
And in Fuji Media Holdings' case, FMH's case, that number is much bigger. So it'll be like 500 million on real estate or 500 million on media. But if you don't care and love for media, then if you don't invest in any business, that business generally slowly dies and declines.
Yes.
So we want to avoid that. So that's why we say spin off real estate so you can focus.
But the reality is, the real estate is making profit out there, and then the sponsors are gone. That's the reality, right? So the question is...
Yeah, so what happens to the company after the real estate is spun off?
Exactly.
So what happens is you end up with a media company that has much more incentive to make money, much more pressure to come up with creative content, and luckily has an enormous portfolio of stocks of other companies that it can slowly or quickly sell in order to invest in all of that new IP, that new content. So it's not, if you unlock the value through the spin-off of real estate, you're not leaving the media company with nothing on the balance sheet. You're leaving it with an enormous pile of cash in the form of cross-shareholdings that the government is incentivizing companies to unwind anyway. So unwind them and use that money to create new IP for the benefit of the shareholders who are still the same shareholders of Fuji Media Holdings.
Right.
Except those original shareholders have now two pieces of paper. They have Sankai Building as a separately traded company, and they have Fuji Media. And it unlocks the value, and it gives more young people within both companies the opportunity to take more senior positions instead of living under the umbrella of Fuji Media Holdings.
I totally get your idea, and I support that. But just a question. I know that relying too much to the profits that are making from real estate is a problem. But in short term, maybe it can support the investment for the contents, don't you think?
You don't need it. You're sitting on top of $1.5 to $2 billion of cross shareholdings, whereby selling those shares, you're going to generate a massive profit. Sadly, you will also have to pay a massive tax in the unwind of the shares, but it is such an enormous pile of money that it could take you 10 years to spend it on new IP.
Okay, so my question was off the mark. I'm sorry.
No, this is exactly what people are worried about, and this is what Fuji Media is worried about. Oh my God.
Yeah.
But in life, if you sleep on a pile of cash, you get so lazy, right? So lazy. So it's not like management would be left out in the cold with no coat on. They still have this huge fur coat of stocks that they could easily sell in order to be able to generate new content. So it's a almost ridiculous idea that they would be left with nothing and no ability to generate profits, because as you sell the cross shareholdings, you will generate massive profits.
Just on what Jamie explained, so Fuji Media Holdings basically carries 200 billion yen in cash on the balance sheet.
Okay.
Right? And then on top of that, there is 300 billion yen in cross shareholdings, right?
That's 500 billion yen. Are you going to feel like you have no coat with 500 billion yen?
Yeah, so say if you already sit on whatever the number is, so FMH actually recently said they only own 200 billion yen. We say they own 300 billion yen. Actually, on the balance sheet, it says 400 billion yen. But whatever the number is, let's pick a number. 500 billion yen. 5,000 oku, right? What's the point on sitting on 500 billion yen when an employee your age, female or male, has a really interesting project where you want to use 1 billion yen that could generate returns?
That could be the next Coco Melon.
Right.
Doesn't take much more than that.
So just having this pile of cash just shows the company's unwillingness to take risk and make the appropriate challenges. And again, it just goes back to like, what is the point of holding so much cash? But that behavior of hoarding cash comes at the cost of what employees could achieve. So that's why, fine, it's great having so much cash around, but maybe you can pay your employees a little bit better. I'm sure everyone would like that, right?
There are a lot of cost cuts out there, so
Right.
maybe,
So I think there's a way to utilize cash, and that's like the concept of capital allocation. So the concept of capital allocation is either you can use the cash to buy back shares or pay dividends.
Right.
But if you don't want to do that, you should really reinvest in the business, because if you reinvest in the business and that generates high return,
Right.
it's compounding. We want either, or we want this one or this one. It doesn't matter which, but please choose one of these options.
And I think they got a message from you, Dalton, and they recently announced that content investment and 100 billion yen buybacks, right? Do you see any progress out there, or it's not enough?
No, I think it's fantastic progress.
It is.
Yep.
Yeah, the fact that the company was able to come up with a 100 billion yen buyback program, the fact that they publicly announced that they're going to reinvest in content, I think is fantastic. Most recently, TBS announced that they're going to create a content production company. So I think all of the broadcasters are going to move towards that way.
I think so.
So I think these are things that are in the right direction, and it's for the benefit of the total content media industry in Japan. So I think these are really positive things.
So they are going for the right direction, but do you think it's enough, or what do you think about that?
I think whether it's enough is maybe subject to different investors basically have different return profiles. But one thing in common is that all equity investors demand more than 8% return on what the business does. So as long as it satisfies that 8%, then it's good for shareholders, right? So in FMH's case, they most recently announced that they want ROE, return on equity, to be above 8%. But to achieve that ROE 8%, you either have to increase profit or you have to reduce the equity component. So effectively, they need to do more buybacks or pay more dividends.
Yes.
Or spin off the Sunshine Building. So the one area that they really have completely ignored is the spin-off, which is being encouraged by the government, and they're ignoring the government recommendations, and they're ignoring shareholder recommendations. So as I say, they're getting a B-.
Do you think those employees are thinking the same way as management thinking?
I think, sadly, that they don't have the same incentives, and they don't own stock.
That's right.
If management doesn't own stock, they don't think like owners.
Exactly.
And what we've been encouraging management to do at Fuji Media and all the companies that we invested in Japan is to pay stock as your bonus. Long-term compensation should include stock at all levels of the organization. We have a few bright, incredibly creative Japanese companies who issue stock, but they're very few and far between. And truly, we would like to see more companies in Japan issuing stock as long-term compensation so that all employees think like shareholders. And therefore, I don't think that employees or the management or the current board of director candidates understand the concept of the spin-off that would create another share for the existing shareholders unless they were shareholders themselves. And therefore, I believe strongly that this proposal of spinning off real estate is still critical to the whole program of unlocking value. And shareholder ownership is one of the areas that they haven't addressed as well.
Okay, now about the core media business, finally. We maybe talked about a little bit, but do you have anything to add for the future?
There's one thing I know, is that I don't know anything about media content other than being someone who loves to watch. And so therefore, if you produce something that's fun and interesting to watch, I'm a happy person. And what I do know is that historically, Fuji Media produced some of the best content in Japan. Because I'm such an old guy, I remember Fuji Media being Ichiban.
Yeah, it was the best.
Without a doubt, it was number one. And so my memory and my emotion is tied to Fuji Media as number one. And so I'm sure within Fuji Media, there remain incredibly creative young people that only need to emerge by giving them some money, selling some of those cross-shareholdings, providing capital for all of these new wonderful projects that young people will create, and generating new IP. That's what's necessary. And that's what's been missing for the last few years, while all of these other methods of entertainment have grown, including Pivot.
Thank you. And as a former worker of traditional media company, I still believe in the potential they have.
Of course.
Yes, that's why I'm still in the media
And
industry.
young people who are encouraged to come to, will be encouraged to come to Fuji Media because Fuji Media has money. And money will generate interest to create new entertainment and new IP. So if Fuji Media is smart and the management of Fuji Media is smart, they will have a phenomenal opportunity in generating and being very competitive in the world.
I totally.
So that's all I know.
Yeah. What do you say?
What, how would you like to add? Because my partner here has another hat that he wears, you know. He's an entertainer with his own channel.
Oh, yes.
On Inter FM radio. And he also has a podcast. So he's also in the entertainment business and is very familiar.
Okay.
But on a serious note, I think with the current situation that's going on with Fuji TV, I think that it's actually more difficult to create good content because the mindset of trying to take, or the mindset of creating good content basically comes from taking risk, right? So in my mind, if you can't take risks, you can't make good content. So one of the reasons why I actually put myself on the, self-nominated myself on the board is because I think we can support Shimizu-san take the right risk. Why? Because we own 50 billion yen of Fuji Media Holdings. So we are already taking risk in Fuji Media Holdings. In the same way, we want Shimizu-san to take risk so that he can create good content, so that he can grow the business. So risk-taking ability is really important. We really want to endorse it in the right way.
So the governance and creativity must go hand in hand. That's what you're saying, right?
Yeah.
Do you think it's going to happen?
You tell me. No, I think they're almost there, right? They've changed a lot in a really short period of time. They were able to change governance significantly, right? So they were able to practically everyone on the board except for Shimizu-san, right? So now Shimizu-san just needs to surround himself with the right people to create the path to a turnaround. I think they're almost there, but now, so that's why we're saying, like Jamie was saying at the start, like there is no point fighting because we're facing the same direction.
Yes.
But for some reason, they decided to neglect all the external directors that we have nominated.
So you've talked to Shimizu-san, right?
We talked to him this week, yes.
And what was your take on that? I mean, like, is he getting some kind of hidden power over, I don't know.
Remember, Shimizu-san does not become the shacho until the annual meeting. Kanemitsu-san is still the shacho of the company, and Hieda-san is his senpai and his mentor, and is still in his ear. So from the beginning, Hieda-san's has been the emperor of Fuji Media. And still today, and my belief is until the annual meeting, he will be the emperor of Fuji Media. So I believe it is Kanemitsu-san and Hieda-san that made very clear to Shimizu-san to not allow any person that was proposed by Dalton Investments to sit on the board of directors. And that was made very clear to us. And so I feel sorry for Shimizu-san. To be perfectly honest, I feel sorry for him because it's not his decision yet. He has not taken control of the situation himself, nor does he have the power to do so. Now, will he be a changed person when he does have the power after the annual meeting, because he will be the shacho at that point? Only time will tell. But as of today, I just feel sorry for him. And I feel disappointed that he wasn't able to take control of the situation and negotiate with us.
I'm not sure what's going to happen in 6月株主総会, but if this Dalton's proxy fight is not going to work, what's going to happen? I mean, do you think you're going to ask for 臨時総会?
Why don't we first see what happens at the annual meeting before we come to the conclusion of what happens after? We're still going to work towards making change at the annual meeting. If for some reason we are not successful at the annual meeting, we have a whole toolbox of other options that we can choose from to make change in the direction that we would like to see. So one at a time. How about that? Focus.
Yes, focus is important. Do you think are you aligned with Murakami Fund and those investment funds?
Aligned. What does that mean?
No, I mean like...
I am scared of Murakami Fund, like everybody, but super creative and super smart, right? So you can't ignore him. And you should probably listen to him. But right now, Aya Murakami, or Aya Nomura, is the largest shareholder of the company.
Yes.
And what I am unbelievably surprised, if they didn't want any of Dalton's directors, why didn't they call up Aya and say, we will take you? What are they thinking? She represents and is the largest shareholder of their company. In any other country of the world, the CEO would call her up and say, we need a really smart woman on the board. You should be on our board. Immediately. They've totally ignored her.
Yes.
I think that's at their own peril.
I'm not going to say anything about that. But do you think they're going to sell it through?
Oh, I have no idea. But I do know they are the largest shareholder.
Yes.
Aya is the largest shareholder of the company. And you shouldn't ignore her.
Yeah.
And also, Kitao-san's subsidiary is a very large shareholder of the company, and you shouldn't ignore him. And Dalton, well, you can't ignore us because we put forward a shareholder proposal. But the reality is all shareholders, not just the three we mentioned, but all shareholders would love to see a spin-off of the real estate business, I'm sure. And all shareholders are fighting for the same thing. They're fighting for change at Fuji Media Holdings, for the benefit of all the stakeholders.
That you are aligned.
Exactly.
Okay. So we're almost running out of time. So finally, what is your key message to our audience or Fuji Media or its shareholders?
I think so far, FMH has gone through significant change, and we really appreciate the changes that they've made so far. And Jamie, I'm sorry if I've actually taken what you might say.
No. It's exactly what I would have said. I would have said thank you to all of the stakeholders. Thank you, the employees. Thank you, the sponsors. Thank you, the other shareholders. We are overwhelmed and humbled by the outpouring of support that we've seen so far. And it's something we never expected, but we're so happy for the change. And
Yeah.
It can only get better from here.
Yeah. So without all the stakeholders voicing their opinion, whether it's the employees, the sponsors, the vendors, and also most importantly, if the viewers didn't express their opinion, we could never have made this much change. It would have been impossible, right? So we really appreciate everyone for like really resonating with what we were trying to do. And moving forward, I still think FMH and Fuji TV is really important for the Japanese media business, content business. And the stronger FMH, the stronger Fuji TV benefits everyone.
Yes.
So we just want to make sure that the company continues to change. Shimizu-san continues to have the strong leadership. And then hopefully one day we can shake hands, do a hug, and then keep FMH even stronger, make FMH even stronger. That's all we wish for. Yeah.
Is that same for you? Finger crossed.
Keeps our fingers crossed.
Okay, thank you very much. 皆さんいかがでしたでしょうか？本日はダルトンインベストメンツの CIO、ジェイミー・ローゼンワルドさんとダルトンのパートナー、西田真澄さんにインタビューをしました。いろいろ皆さんも聞き足りないところもあると思うんですが、ぜひコメント欄に書いていただいて、今後も我々インタビュー続けていきますので、引き続きしっかりと見ていきたい話題だなと私も思っております。本当にお二方ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。
ありがとうございました。